Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. Well, last year at this time, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán kicked off his country's 6-month EU presidency on the defensive. He was under fire at the time from EU partners for a new media law that critics saw as a threat to press freedom. Now we're 1 year later, and the list of EU complaints about Orbán has grown even longer. Some are even accusing the Hungarian Prime Minister of acting more like a power-hungry dictator than a true democrat. And some in the EU, some go so far as to say that Hungary now poses a threat to European values and should be sanctioned. Now, my guest today couldn't disagree more. His name is Zoltán Kovács. Thank you very much for being here. You are the Hungarian government spokesman, or perhaps I should say a Hungarian government spokesman. But what you tell me today, basically, you are speaking on behalf of the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán.
Good evening, that's right.
Okay, well, thank you. And I have quite a few questions, but let me just start with this. You wrote recently, actually, in the Wall Street Journal that what we are seeing right now in Hungary is simply, the term was a reboot of the system after 20 years of drift. And it's also, you said, in the national interest. The people are behind it. Yet we saw tens of thousands of people demonstrating right after the new year when the new constitution took effect against these very new laws. Surely there's a lot more resentment than you seem to be admitting.
It's a good sign that you have these demonstration and rally. 23 years ago, when communism collapsed in Hungary, it was impossible to have these rallies. So Fidesz and the Christian Democratic Party Alliance, those politicians who are driving this country at the moment, were fighting fiercely against communism to bring these values alive in Hungary.
Except that state television in Hungary didn't show the images of this rally at all. It didn't broadcast it.
Well, again, it's the form of making your opinion public that is important. It's a matter of an independent institution that is being examined as far as I know.
But I mean, I don't mean to press that question, but I will, because one of the objections that the Europeans have is about press freedom. There's been a lot of talk about one particular station, Klub Radio, being essentially deprived of its license to broadcast. And this would seem to speak to those very concerns, that there are major rallies and the Hungarians themselves, if they're watching their TV, won't see them.
You've pointed out two legal issues, if you like, that should be sorted out. But we should come back to where the whole debate belongs to, that is the level of substance. So it just turned out last year, a year ago, exactly a year ago, actually, last January, that when we came down from the heated political or emotionally heated debate, it just turned out that in values, in common sense, we are very close to, and we are basically identical with European values. That's why it was possible, basically, to have an agreement in 10 days with the Commission on minor issues.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but last year, if I remember, one of the reasons that things were bridged and the differences were settled is Hungary did change or modify some aspects of the media law to meet European concerns. Are we going to see similar behavior this time? Will Hungary meet Europe's
that's
concern?
the normal behavior in Europe, and that's one of the values common in Europe. That's why we became the members of the European Union. Democracies exist in different forms. Wherever you look in Europe, the same values are being basically put in form in different manner. You look at France, you look in the UK, there are different forms of democracy. Hungary is having its own form, but the values are the same.
Well,
so if it comes
Hungary's
down,
having its own form. Let me just kick in here. But some people would say that that form is a more authoritarian form of democracy. It's anti-democracy, what we're seeing right now.
now that's again, this is the debate I'm not going to have. I mean, if you question the democratic nature of Hungary, the Hungarian leadership, then that's an endless debate, because then we are going to have a political debate, a debate of emotions and political values, which we don't think there is a time or place for that.
Okay, let me then put the words in someone else's mouth. France 24 spoke yesterday to Guy Verhofstadt, who, as you know, is a liberal member of the European Parliament, former Belgian Prime Minister, a man who's known as being seen as sensible, rational person. He said to us that he thinks Hungary right now poses a threat to European values. How would you respond to that? This is not just anyone saying that.
I'm just coming from a background talk with some French journalists who started the discussion with the remark that they don't think Hungary is getting off the way of the common European values we all share. So again, This debate should come back to where it belongs to. That is the level of substance, that is the level of professional debate. It's going to be sorted out. That's the case with the Hungarian National Bank law, in which we have implemented 13 of the 15 suggestions made by the European Central Bank. We have a discussion, we have an argument on two legal issues with the Commission, with the European Central Bank. That's going to be sorted out.
Sorted out, but let's get back to the bank, because with regard to the central bank, the governor of that bank himself said recently that he considers these laws, he said they amount to a state takeover of his institution.
Nobody is trying to take over the Hungarian National Bank. The Hungarian National Bank is sacrosanct as any other national bank in Europe. The independence, the sovereignty of the National Bank shall not be touched in any way.
But can you argue with the fact that Prime Minister Orbán right now is in the process of, with his two-thirds majority of his Fidesz party in parliament, of putting his party loyalists in top posts, in important posts, the state prosecutor, the National Audit Committee? Can you deny? You can't really deny that. He is doing that.
In Western democracies, it's absolutely normal that politicians who are party politicians or members of the parliament are being appointed to public office. Responsibility and the independence of the office comes through the law, comes through the issues, the values that we all share, and that is enacted by Parliament. So I think the security, the guarantee for the independence of these institutions is guaranteed by the law, and you should look at actually the working, the acting of those who are leading these institutions.
That's fair enough. I'm not saying that, you know, if your party has a majority in parliament, you could argue that you have the right to appoint your own people to the top posts. That's what the people wanted. But it seems everywhere in Hungary right now, it's the Fidesz party, including the parliament. Some people call it a rubber stamp parliament. It is effectively, I won't say it's like Putin's parliament in Russia, but some people have made that comparison too.
Why not compare it to Margaret Thatcher's determination to change the system when it's time for that? We are making some tough decisions. As a matter of fact, for the past 20, 23 years, these issues has always been there for Hungary to be solved out. Nobody had the determination, nobody had the majority in parliament to finish with these issues. The constitution itself is such a matter. I mean, the constitutional process is there in Hungary, or was there in Hungary for 23 years. Everybody wanted to have a new constitution. Nobody had the mandate.
But you could argue that the constitution people wanted might not have necessarily been this particular constitution.
Sure, times change. We are enacting, or we have enacted actually, a new fundamental law and the accompanying cardinal laws that are making it up for a new constitution. This is a return to the democratic values used to exist before the communists coming to this country, and the Russian type, Soviet type of constitution was forced on the country. So we are trying to put the country back on the track it used to belong. As I mentioned in the Wall Street Journal, this is amounting to a major system update, a reboot of the system for the better of the country. A
system update, but the one thing that really badly needs updating is the Hungarian economy. It's been hit very hard by the crisis here in Europe. Hungary's in talks right now with the International Monetary Fund. How are those talks going?
First of all, let me just make one point. I mean, we are trying to clean up the mess left behind by 2 terms of socialist liberal governments that had led the country to the brink of total economic collapse by 2008, so before the economic crisis coming to Europe.
But Viktor Orbán has been in office now for 18 months. He's had a little bit of time.
That's a year and a half, and there's a major system update in the economy as well. That's what you would call a structural reform. A structural reform requires tough decisions. Tough decisions not for the domestic population, but of course to many interests. So what we are facing now actually is the turmoil ignited by these steps.
Okay, but the economy specifically, the forint is weak, the financing costs are high right now. How long could Hungary sustain this? And what if the IMF says, no, change your laws or we're not giving you the money? How long can you go on?
You say that in this moment the forint is not very strong, but we say that the fundamentals are a lot stronger than, say, back in 2008, and that's what matters. In our perception, that's why we are looking for an IMF agreement in a sense that we need a safety net. So we would like to continue with those measures, with those structural reforms we started, not because of the pressure of the IMF, not because of the pressure of any foreign power, but from our own will.
But in the end, it might just be the pressure from the IMF, will it not, that perhaps persuades Viktor Orbán to reconsider some of these laws or at least to modify them?
it is a huge...
The fiscal laws,
This
the
is a huge
law.
game, if you like, an economic and power game. In that game, you always have to face, challenges, and if you, at times you have to make tough decisions. You have to face pressures. What is going to come, in my perception, and we are convinced, there's going to be an agreement with the IMF to the better of the country.
Final question. What does the Prime Minister say to you, sort of behind closed doors when you're sitting there, and is he afraid of the turn of relations right now at the EU? Does he have any concerns that if this thing goes further, EU might make good on some of its threats and try to launch a procedure to sanction Hungary for these laws?
This is not a sentimental issue. This is an issue of pragmatism. So we are trying to achieve what all member states of the European Union are trying to achieve every time. So go until it's possible in national interest, go until it's possible for the Hungarian interest. When we get to the wall, we see what is going to happen.
Yes, but you are still a member of the EU, and I assume that most Hungarians still want to stay within the EU.
Most certainly, and that gives a guarantee that things are going to be sorted out in a way that is usual in Europe.
Well, we have heard it from the Hungarian government spokesman, Zoltán Kovács. Thank you very much for being my guest here today. A difficult time, a time of strained relations right now between Hungary and the EU, but you are optimistic that they will find some sort of solution right now for their differences.
Indeed, thank you.
Thanks to all of you for watching the interview here on France 24.